Everybody, I'm Rick DiClemente, Starself Astrologer. We are starting the workshop now, the webinar. So when we are done, I will be mailing you the link. You should be able to download this. If you have to miss some of it, you should be able to download it and watch the entire thing. 10-year anniversary of the tsunami. Do I sign off or can I leave? Carly, you should be able to just, no. If you want to sign off when you leave, yeah, you can sign off. It should be an end session. You can't affect us. I'm going to get started. I want to tell you how much I appreciate it. It's a shame that a lot of us are meeting on such a sad day for you Australians. But as you could tell, these two planets, Uranus and Pluto, have a lot to do with monumental revolutionary forces. So there's a lot of good going on and a lot of bad. And I'm going to use tonight to try to explain to you slowly. I'm going to try to force myself to slow down and show you how these things work and why it's happening. And hopefully after tonight you have at least a little better understanding of how it goes. Marilyn, welcome to the crowd. And I'm just going to get to work. All right. I am in Pittsburgh. People are scattered all about. Most of us know each other on Facebook. Rebecca, welcome. Before I will be switching from the screen. You should be able to see me at all times, and I will be switching to some graphics of where Uranus and Pluto were in 1965, where they are tonight, and I won't be doing much else because I am new at this software and I want to keep us all connected. The last half hour, I will encourage you to turn your mic on, maybe even your video if you wish. Your video won't come on unless you turn it on, so don't worry. For question and answer period. Anyhow, during 1965, I'm going to get to that video, get to that graphic in a minute. One of the things you have to understand that'll make tonight go easier is what an opening square is. In astrology, when something starts, whether it's a child's life, the purchase of a car, the closing on a house, the purchase of a puppy, whether it's starting a new job. There are many, many cycles in astrology. The sun cycle, the moon, the Mercury, Venus, Mars. And that's one reason astrology is so confusing, is one cycle can be going on while the other one's going on over top of it. This is why you kind of get a glimpse that astrology works, but then you get confused by something else. So what I'll be explaining to you tonight is a very major part of what's going on. By no means all of it, but it is the major force that is happening now. So when a entity begins, such as I start a new job, I happen to be born on January 1st, which is the 10th degree of Capricorn every year, about within a degree. If I start a job, as many people do on January 1st, 90 days later, 1/4 of the way through the cycle is called the opening square. And when that opening square happens, according to that job, I will have my first crisis. I will have my first test to the entity, which is me in that job. You heard of 90-day trials. We do these things, we line ourselves up with these archetypal forces unconsciously, and we thought, watch humans just pick 90. Well, we didn't pick the 90. It's a natural part of the cycle. So most people in their 90-day cycle, most people succeed. You even have 90 days sometimes before you have evaluation. But it's a test to the entity. How is the entity doing? And the 89th day is even more acute than the 90th day. But usually when you get to day 91, 92, things smooth out. You may have had a few problems to deal with. Now if you deal with other planets like the moon, you've heard of the new moon and the quarter moon. That's the opening square, but it's 1 week later. It's usually a minor emotional bump because the moon is emotion. Let's go out to something like Saturn. Saturn is a very good example. Saturn is 28 years. So the opening square of Saturn is its first 7 years. You've certainly heard of the 7-year itch in a marriage. That goes for anything. Starting a job, starting a partnership, starting the Beatles, whatever it is. At that 7th year, it's not exactly by the calendar. It depends on when the planet's exactly 7 or exactly at a right angle. But you will have an opening crisis. If it's Saturn, the entity will be tested on how solid it is, how reasonable it is, how practical. We don't usually notice the one at 7 because we're too young, 2nd grade, but the one at 14, the opposition, is huge. That's the 7th grade, 8th grade, and the children are coming out of the group mentality into individuated mentality, and we all know that junior high can be a very traumatic time. Then it goes on to its closing square at age 21 until it returns at age 28. Finally, and I have a video covering this very topic from 2011, which I'll give to you later. Look at the planet Uranus. Uranus goes around the circle in 84 years. So when you are born, 21 years later, Uranus is in its opening square. It's square to itself. It's at a right angle to itself. It's 1/4 the way around. And when you're 1/4 the way around, that's your original crisis in terms of Uranus. Freedom, liberation. What happens to us when we're 21? This is why, you can drink now and you're driving a car. You don't want anybody telling you what to do. Let's go off to college. Just have a good time. It's usually very exciting, very liberating. It can be very reckless. Each planet has positive and negative. Then you see 21 years later when Uranus is halfway around, the opposition at age 42, your midlife crisis. So, just a little bit about how opening squares work. Now, okay, Carl, I'm glad you're back. Now, everybody else that's joined us, I'm very glad you're here. Kathleen, sweet. Kathy, nice to see you. Everybody, welcome aboard. Now, I'm going to switch to a graphic and show you where the planets were in 1965. Okay, now you can see the chart of the planets in 1965, and you should see my mouse going around Uranus, which looks like radar screens, and Pluto, which looks like a man standing there. And you can see they were both at 17 degrees, and thank you very much, Victoria, and 10 minutes. Now, Pluto takes 250 years to go around, 256 years to go around. And while it's going around, it stays in a sign anywhere from 13 years in Sagittarius to 30 years when it's going through Gemini because of its oval orbit, elliptical orbit. So meanwhile, Uranus goes around every 84 years, every 84 years, every 84 years. Well, it just so happened that when 1960 came, all the way through 1972, from 1960 through 72, those 12 years, or the 60s, these two planets kept going back and forth over top of each other. All right, I'm going to minimize this. And I'm going to bring myself back to this. All right. So when Uranus and Pluto gathered, I mean, I was a late teenager during the time, and it's really hard to tell what's the teens and what's these crazy planets, but people thought we were all losing our minds. I mean, it was unbelievable what coincided in 64 with the Beatles, and the conservative United States started to lose its conservativeness, and you started to see the revolution. That's what happens when these two planets join. That's their nature. And when you have similar natures and you join up two planets, they're like two people being together. They bring out the best, they bring out the worst in each other. These two planets were extremely explosive. I have thousands of clients with Uranus and Pluto in their chart together because I have so many people born from 60 to 72. And they've all got that Uranus-Pluto real close in their chart. And just now I'm starting to see people without that. So during the 60s, you saw, as it peaked in 1965 in October, you saw the Beatles, you saw the assassinations of the Kennedys and Martin Luther and Malcolm X, and you saw the rise of Virgoan type things. Now you had the revolution going on, which was Uranus and Pluto, social revolution. Why? Uranus is about, I want to break out of my skin and be myself and express myself, and nothing holds me back, and new innovation. And Pluto is all about slow, massive change to the entire human race. Hi, Sandra. Nice to see you. Okay, so not only were these two planets getting closer and closer, because you remember Uranus moves faster, and these planets appear to move backwards. They move back and forth. Just like when you pass a car, it's called retrograde motion. When you're driving and you pass a car, it appears that that other car is going backward, but really you're just going forward. And you also see retrograde when you look at a person's hubcap, and it appears the hubcap is spinning backwards. It's just against the backdrop of the other stars. So when these two planets came, it was a real dichotomy, because these planets are really explosive and very powerful, and Uranus says, let's just have a revolution, and Pluto says, okay, let's do it. And John Lennon says, let's have a revolution, and Uranus says, okay. So they're kind of strange bedfellows. They're not real warm planets. They're both explosive social planets. And look what happened. So the 60s were shaky, and if you wanted to see something, what if those two planets were in Leo? What if those two planets were in Gemini or in Aries? They were in a Jude Allen, if you're having trouble, please try to log out and back in, because we've had some success with that. The fact that these two wild planets were together in a very tame sign of Virgo. Virgo doesn't want a scene. Virgo is very practical. Virgo is about not making a scene. Get behind the curtain. Be number two. Let your work speak for itself. But more importantly, Virgo is about the common man. Unions. I want everybody in the community to have the same equality. And this worked its way through the archetype of a Virgo personality in this country, known as LBJ. And during that time, we see it so much coming through the personality, but when you're an astrologer, you see the archetypal force. And this is what brought about because the country was ready. Remember, this is not just the country. These Uranus-Pluto times aligned with the French Revolution in the past, the Mexican Revolution in the past. They line up with all major revolutions. Now, I will take a second out and advertise a book for you, because it's so awesome. It explains all these trends. It's one of the greatest books ever written in astrology by Richard Tarnas, Tarnas, and the book is called Cosmos and Psyche, Psyche. He took 30 years, very slowly, to itemize each of the outer planets, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn, and when they opposed each other, when they squared each other, and he paralleled them with all the famous events throughout history in great detail. This book is just astounding. So I'll get off of that soapbox for a minute. So when Uranus and Pluto exploded, and the old guard was, what's happening with these young hippies today? What's happening with these kids with long hair? What's going on? These kids getting thrown out of school for bell bottoms on. Girls wearing miniskirts getting thrown out of school. They were losing control of the youth after compared to the mild 60s in the Believe It the Beaver and the Father Knows Best. I mean, they were starting to lose control because it was time for a revolution of some size. Fortunately, back then, the community, all communities, were a little bit more behaved, had more morals, and you've seen what's going on now. It's just flat out disgusting in so many ways. But there are a lot of really good things happening too. So we are in the midst of revolution. So this revolution just went on all through the 60s. In the middle of 65, you have the British invasion. All those things that I put on that graphic that I put on Facebook. You had the birth of Medicare and Medicaid and student rights and civil rights. And they're talking, I think they're even making a movie now on Selma. The issues with abortion, the issues with Miranda rights, just all these things that have to do with human rights, women's rights, voting rights. So I ask you, 37 years later, in the past 4 or 5 years, Uranus and Pluto have become more or less square. I will show you. So I'll go back to screen sharing, desktop, and I will show you this. This is what it is now. Pluto and Uranus were together right here. They were together in 1965, 18 degrees. Good. Thank you very much, John, for those comments. Since Pluto takes 256 years to go around, by 1965 all the way to 2014, Pluto has gone to here. This is where it is right now. So you can see in its long 250-year cycle, it's gone here. And it just looks like, oh, by the way, Uranus is here, Pluto's there. But that's not the story. All these years, 65, the 70s, the 80s, 90s, O's and the 10s, as Pluto has been moving, Uranus has been moving faster, since Uranus is an 84-year cycle. And in the past couple of years, Uranus has been in this area, and Pluto has been in this area. And they've been at a right angle to each other. This is the opening square. This is the opening test of what was begun in 65. This Pluto keeps moving back and forth a little bit. We've been under this for 3 years already. We got a final one coming in March. And its effect will be on us for at least a couple more years, because these planets are very powerful. And Uranus has been in this area since 2011. So you see the right angle here is the opening square of the promise that was made when Uranus and Pluto conjuncted. So, when two planets align, just like people, like anything, it's a promise. In the Virgo promise, we will have unions. We will have equal rights for people. People are the same. We have the Equal Rights Act, voting rights, Medicare, Medicaid. I'm not going to get into a political argument about this, but I want you to see where this is coming from. And look what's happened the last 3 years. All of these issues are up for grabs. People are fighting bloody fights over no more welfare, no more Medicare, no more Obamacare, no more voting rights. I mean, just every one of these issues. Why was it's a big deal in the 70s, 80s, 90s? Why was it quiet? Because there wasn't time for it to be tested. And what's really peculiar, when two planets whether they conjunct. Remember, an opening square can be one planet, and when it gets 1/4 of the way to its own path, or two planets conjunct, that's the new birth, for about 37 years later, in the last 3 years, Uranus and Pluto at a right angle to each other. So they've been going like this. This is why this won't stop the past 3 years. And I keep writing about Uranus, Pluto, believe me, I am tired about writing about Uranus, Pluto. But it's the story. Pluto is very slow moving. Uranus is moving much quicker back and forth. But when they do that, they will square 1 time, 3 times, 5 times, or 7 times. Today was 6. It just happens that way. Some planets that move by real fast, strangers in the night, they'll square each other once and go about their way. These guys are hitting 7 times. And they're so powerful, they don't have to hit exactly. Because what happens, if you've all seen my graphics in the past, when other planets get involved, like the full moon, Mars, then you get 3 planets involved. So when Uranus is close to Pluto and Mars comes along, you've seen my diagram of the baseball diamond, any combination of planets along those 4, first base, second base, third base, home plate, that tension gets re-exaggerated. That's why these issues, which are not only social issues and planetary issues, these are going on in your chart too. Your dog's chart, your wife's chart, your kid's chart, your job chart, your car's chart, your business's chart. Uranus and Pluto are somewhere in your chart, all charts. And every time they get hit, and this is why you're feeling revolution. So it's why this thing keeps peaking and subsiding and peaking and subsiding. And now it's going to start subsiding again for a few months. And what happens with it is people start to try to cool off. They try to get cooler heads. You know, the Occupy movement, the Tea Party movement, all these movements are symbolic of the peaks of the revolution. But what I've been watching, and I watch these for many years, the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and today 6th square, each one seems to be getting more intense. I don't have to tell you, there's this racial stuff that's going on. You can't even touch it with your baby finger in many cities. And these things with the tension between certain people and the police. I mean, it's a very violent time right now. People dramatically taking sides, etc. But I think what this is leading to, the final one of March 16th next year, and I do think we're going to see a crescendo. I think we're going to see a finale. I'm not predicting doom, but there will be some things that will be very grave. There will be some things that go over the edge, and other things that will be breaking through. Because what you're seeing now is you're seeing these tests. I call it the report card of the 60s. You're seeing these tests to all these things, but you got to remember that the sign of Virgo does what it should do. They got a great sense of doing what's right. Well, how long can you live on that? How much of a promise is really there? How solid is that? Well, we just put one foot in front of the other through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and we just marching right along, and we got to the square, which is in the last 3 years, and we found out that there's been a lot of turbulence. We don't really like this, and we don't really want this, we don't really like that. And now this is why these issues are all coming up, but they're becoming conscious issues now. In the 60s, we were kind of naive, and things just kind of happened, and we actually had a Congress that worked for the people. Now they're conscious. Do we want to continue with this? No, it's a handout. No, you got to help people that are poor. No more helping the bums. No, you got to help people that are down and out. Everything's becoming conscious because today's the 15th. 3 more days. Pluto opposes the United States Sun. You can't analyze this discussion with just Uranus-Pluto because no planets act alone. 3 days from now, Pluto will be at 12 degrees Capricorn. The United States chart, born on the 4th of July, 12 degrees Cancer. Pluto will be exactly opposite the United States Sun in 3 days. In astrology, when there's an opposition of major planets like Pluto, what that means is we're going through an identity crisis. Because the sun is our identity. Even to the point of some are wondering if this is the end of the empire. Well, what's happening now is we're really having to face issues that have been shoved under the rug. This is how Pluto works. Pluto doesn't let this stuff go on. Pluto lifts up the rug to see what you're really made of. Are you made of character? Do you really mean these black rights? Do you mean these voting rights? Is this just an act? Do you mean this Medicare to take care of people? Do we want to watch more people fall off their chair and die in emergency rooms? So, I've written a lot about this through the years. All on my website, Starself. You can read all you want. Thanks to Melody over there on your list who did such a good job of indexing all the newsletters. Now, what started as a relatively tame revolution in the 60s of Uranus and Pluto, because they were in mild Virgo, well, they're not mild anymore. Why? Pluto moved into Capricorn. Let me show you this. All right, let's go back to the present one. This is the present moment. Here's Pluto at 12 degrees of Capricorn. In 2008, Pluto crossed this line between Sagittarius and into Capricorn. And I've done many videos on it and many stories. This is the Pluto and Capricorn era. This is from 2008, January 25th to 2023. So as Pluto moved in, as soon as it moved in 2008, we had the financial crisis. It wasn't just a financial crisis. It was all things held up by pillars. All institutions. Look at how much corruption Pluto has unearthed since 2008. It can't even dig it up fast enough. Okay, so Pluto is now approaching halfway to 12 degrees. And on May 27th, 2011, May 27th, 11. Was it 2010? I get mixed up. There you go. May 27th of 2010. I wrote about this then. Boom. Do you see that? Uranus went from Pisces. This is the start of the zodiac. Aries all the way around to Pisces. Uranus has spent 84 years going around the zodiac. And in the afternoon at 3:30, I think it was, Uranus crossed into 0 Aries on that day. And that's when you have a 7-year stay of Uranus in Aries. That's when Uranus started to square Pluto. Pluto was at 4, Uranus was at 0. So they were in squaring signs. Aries squares Capricorn. They were at a right angle. Okay, so it started the revolution. But the point is this. When Uranus entered Aries, Uranus was about, I want to be myself, I want to break free. And I've written and written and written and written about Uranus is the most exciting times of your life. And it's also very revolutionary, and it can be very, very disruptive. The example I use is when Uranus comes through your chart, it's, pardon our dirt, we're going to remodel the restaurant while you're eating so people in the future will have a better restaurant. So you go to this restaurant for 2 months and they got buzzsaws out and hammers and you're trying to eat and it's chaos. But the altogether overall overreaching purpose is it's going to be renewed. So it's chaos is necessary. So when Uranus entered Aries in May 27th of 2010, this is the planet that hits exactly. Here's what shocked me. Well, let me roll forward a little bit. Anyhow, what happened during those times? Up until that time, people would come to me as an astrologer and say, you know, I'm nervous about this change. I want to do this thing, but I'm not sure. What do you see? And they really aren't looking to me for advice, which I'm very glad of, but they look for confirmation. And this was really exaggerated this past April when we had the Grand Cross. There were 4 planets in a perfect cross. Uranus, Pluto, Mars, and Jupiter. It was so Uranus and Aries because all of a sudden people were saying to me, Rick, I'm going to hang out a shingle. Rick, I'm going to Hawaii. Hey, I'm starting a new business. I'm out of there. I quit that job. People were becoming really sure of themselves and just doing it. They weren't asking me. Well, the reason people ask me is not because I'm so bright. It's because they know I could see some things in the chart, but because people are complex. People have fighting, vying forces in their head, and they're not sure which one to listen to. So they go outside for a little confirmation, somebody kind of neutral. And I usually say, yeah, you're right on track. Let's modify this a little bit, and boy, go, go, go. But when these Uranian times happened in Aries, people were just coming forth, and everybody was becoming an Aries, because Aries is the sign of like this. Aries is the sign that knows what it wants. Let's go, gas pedal, full steam ahead. Not like us timid Cancers or worrying Capricorns or Virgos who are trying to do it the right way, or cautious Scorpio. Aries is, I want to do it, gas pedal, let's go. So we were seeing a whole new revolution. Now it was running into square with Pluto. So here's exactly, you could catch what you missed in the recording. Yes, thank you. Okay. So, not only are you seeing the Uranus and Pluto from Virgo come into its oats and square itself, but when they got to the right angle, Uranus was in the newfound sign of Aries, which is very selfish. I want to do what I want to do. And Pluto in Capricorn. Let me backtrack for a second, explain to you. I've written a lot about Pluto and Capricorn, and many astrologers have. Pluto is a very serious planet. It wants to make sure you mean something. Why are you taking up space? Do you have courage? It's all about the betterment of society and you meaning something. And I can't tell you how many people I've talked to through the past 5 years or so, 8 years, who just couldn't take it anymore and had to quit their jobs because there wasn't any meaning. They were bringing home money. They were putting bread and butter on the table, but they didn't have a sense of service, a sense of meaning. And that's what Pluto does. He's got his negative qualities, but he's sure got his positive. He says, why are you taking up space? What are you here for? Why are you taking up air? What do you mean? And this is what rules Scorpios. And this is one reason Scorpio people are very intense and they're not very tolerant of weaknesses around them. because they're very tough on themselves. They want the best. So you've got Pluto in Capricorn since 2008 till 2023. And it's in the middle of dismantling all these 10 states, and Congress is totally falling apart, and the UN and the Fed and the low self-esteem of the government. I mean, you're seeing all these institutions fall to their own corruption. Pluto doesn't make the corruption, but what Pluto does, it exposes it. Sooner or later, some planet's got to come along and say, that's enough. You're going down the basement. That's enough. Stop what you're doing. We're going down the basement with some flashlights, and we're going to look. And that's why it's not uncommon at all. No, we aren't. Scorpios aren't, that is. Scorpio is also a wonderful sign. But when you go down the basement, you start to see anything that's been rotting all along. It's very common for people to come to me during a Pluto time and they're having pipes break, they're having plumbing issues, they're having foundation problems. Liza, my partner, she called this for years ahead of Pluto going into Capricorn. She called all the problems with fracking, with problems with the plate tectonics and plate shifting and volcanoes and earthquakes. So Pluto is about digging underneath you and finding out, are you really standing on solid ground? Repairman just fixed your pipes today. Yeah, well, that makes sense. Okay, so you've got this Pluto that's trying to perform social upheaval, and along comes Uranus, which is so selfish. So here's one of the big parts of the square. You got Uranus, which is, I'm going to go do my thing. And what happened with Uranus? What did I warn about over and over and over and over and over? Liberate yourself. Liberate yourself, but do not blame everybody else. That's very Uranian. You've been cramping my style. If it wasn't for this job that's holding me back, if it wasn't for these kids, if it wasn't for this 9 to 5, when you don't use Uranus correctly, and you've seen a lot of blaming going on in the news, their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault. Uranus is about getting past your blockage. What is blockage? Well, if you're a student of the Course in Miracles, blockage is your own awareness of love inside you. Call it what you want. But that's really what it is. Are you blocking your awareness of your love source that's in you? The source that always gives to you. So, the people who use the Uranus energy properly were the people who liberated themselves. They identified their own blockages, and you look back in the past 3 years. Remember, Uranus moved in May of 2010. Past 4 years. It's there for 7 years. Look at the people who've been liberating. This is exactly when the Arab Spring started. Tunisia and across the top of Africa. All the unrest. People start to feel internally this need to get past their own uptightness, their own non-workability, their own blockages, and they project it outward. Oh, it's the government. Oh, it's your party. Oh, it's the family. Oh, it's that. Well, it's very likely a mixture of lots of things. So if somebody's on your back, it's definitely time to straighten that out. But Uranus is known for what? Overreacting, becoming violent. So here you've got this Uranus teetering at the same time that Pluto's digging all this up, and that's why you're seeing what you're seeing. So really, what the Uranus wants is a freer Rick, a freer you and me, so I can be more myself. You can be more yourself. And I started to write an article about a year ago. Yes, John, infrastructure, breakdown, roads, pipes, bridges. You're exactly right. So I started to write an article about a year ago about free will. And I won't even talk anymore about free will or karma because I have absolutely no idea what it is. I've debated about it so long that I ended up with no answer, and I don't even go there. But I started to think, oh, we're the land of the free and the home of the brave. We're Uranus and Aries. We're not going to have trouble liberating ourselves. And everybody wants to come to America to be free. And I started thinking, I don't know people are free. Almost everybody I know is uptight. I can't say this because what are they going to think? If I do this, what's my wife going to do? And I started to see how so many people lack individuality. They're getting there. They're doing better. We are waking up because of the seeds that were planted in the 60s. But I started to see what we do is we take it out on other people if we can't liberate ourselves. And true liberation, in my opinion, really means I'm letting God come through me. Whether it's I'm a psychic, whether I'm an artist, whether I'm a carpenter, whether I'm a teacher. We all know that. Love comes out of your heart. You see it in people's eyes. Unless you're looking at some people in Congress, nothing comes out. That should be enough for us to tell right there. So this urge is a beautiful urge to shine our individual light through. And I realize that Americans have a long way to go to become true individuals. And that's going on and needs to go on. And we have to be careful that we're not blaming. If we need to debate with somebody, have adult conversations with somebody, get things settled, that's a different issue. But you don't just do an Aries way of busting your way through. On the other hand, Pluto's sitting there. What's it doing in Capricorn? Pluto's in Capricorn, the sign of education, government, institutions, the things that we rely on. And we're finding all this corruption. So what's really ultimately happening, and you've even seen some posts in the past few days on Facebook about, and I was right, I think, what I wrote about in the last couple of years. This is the first time the human race has really had to take ownership of its own evolution. You can read it with Charles Eisenstein. You can read it with Eckhart Tolle. You can read it with Wayne Dyer. You can read it wherever you want, but Tolle says it in his book, The New Earth. Evolve or die. Evolve or die. And then all of a sudden, a little sleeper snuck through, watching all this fight with Uranus and Pluto the last 4 years. Saturn quietly moving through Scorpio, leaving Scorpio 8 days from now. Saturn, grim, tough, strong Saturn in the very heavy sign of Scorpio, moving kind of quietly because of the noise that Uranus and Pluto are making. And what I started noticing in the past year is a laugh out loud Congress. You're right, Jude. I started noticing that a lot of people aren't making it. And that's the Saturn in Scorpio as the icing on top of the cake, which is Uranus square Pluto. Because you see, Saturn in Scorpio is not mean. Pluto is not mean, but Pluto will get rid of you if you are trying to stop evolution. Better said, you either evolve through courage and start moving, or your blockages have to be moved out of the way. And if you can't get the blockages out of the way, then you have to move aside. Because evolution will not stop for our lack of faith in flowing forward. So, we now have to really not only re-examine who we really are and quit wearing this laurel wreath of being victorious in 1945 over Hitler. I mean, thank God we did, but Vietnam was not another Hitler. Iran was not another Hitler. Afghanistan is not another Hitler. We got to come back and you know, the World War II was a real fight against somebody trying to destroy us, and we have to be very careful how we pick our battles now. So as Pluto opposes the Sun 3 days from now, it's in effect now, we're continuing to identify who we are as a people, who we really are. And we're a Cancer country, and Cancer archetype does not like to self-examine. Cancer archetype is, hey, love it or leave it. You want to bitch about it, then get out of here. That's not the attitude you got to take during these massive transits. And you're seeing a lot of cooler heads are prevailing. Look how astounding it was during this Ferguson announcement and the one in New Jersey. Look at how the crowds milled around and milled around and milled around and milled around, and you could just see the violence just on the tip of people's tongue, but they were holding back. There was something new to us. People are holding back. We're realizing we can't just go into the LA riots once again, which happened in the 60s during the conjunction. People are realizing we need to come to the front steps of the hospital, white people, black people together, and hold up our hands and make our statement about the police. Whatever it is, whatever the issue is, we're realizing we have to work together. And I think that's because the Uranus-Pluto has taken us so long to get used to. We knew it was coming. That's the advantage-disadvantage that us astrologers have. Even though we itemize that watching it happen is scary to us, scarier to us than anybody else, because it is coming true. But Tarnus's book is so phenomenal at explaining every detail of these outer combinations of planets. So what does this mean when you start to add it up? It means that we have to, on one hand, be willing to dig up the corruption, be honest and be willing to introspect, be ballsy and strong, and let go of what we need to go. I wrote about it recently. We need to let go of what doesn't work or fix it. How many times do you see people in a marriage? You know the marriage is dead. You can see it, the relationship. You either got to fix it or get out. And a lot of people choose to stay with it. That's up to them. But it's not just marriages. It's married to a job. It's something you're doing. If it's not working for you, you got to end it. And the worst thing you can do in astrology, absolutely, is hanging on. Letting go. As soon as you let go, almost instantaneously things start to work for you, because you're letting go of a path that's not you. There's not any reality to it. There's not any God flow to it. So we're going through this Pluto time of trying to re-identify ourselves. We're trying not to be too violent. We're trying not to be overreactionary while dealing with two of the most reactionary planets there are. At the same time, we're trying to expedite our individuality. And the worst thing you can do is to overreact and just try to be a bull in a china shop. So, what the Uranus-Pluto means is advancing your individuality in a healthy, unique way, which I believe God supports. It's natural, and the only way of saying it. At the same time, rededicating ourselves and finding our power in numbers. I was so thrilled recently to see these pictures, whether you are pro-police, anti-police, whatever you want to be, to just see people coming out and holding up signs and together, speaking as a unified voice. That's the only way through, in my opinion, and that's what we are doing, and that's a wonderful thing to see. People like my son, 28, these are the Pluto and Scorpio generation. These kids are born from about 1982 to to about 95. They were born when Pluto was going through Scorpio. And as they start to take over, they're not going to stand for what these last two generations did. The Pluto and Libra generation, the Pluto and Virgo generation. Pluto and Scorpio people are very serious, and they want the real deal, and they want to get it over with. They're intense folks. So the Uranus and Pluto is going to continue to back off for a while. They're going to come for their final square in March 16th of 2015, 4 days shy of spring. And you're going to feel this. Now, what does it mean individually? Besides these global patterns, there's a part of you that wants to mean more. See, I would have to look at your individual charts. Where is Pluto and Capricorn in your particular chart? Where is Uranus and Aries in your particular chart? And those two appear to be conflicting now. Well, what does conflict mean in astrology? It merely means that these two parts of you aren't going away. When one of them sings, the other one's going to sing. And vice versa. So you better start learning how to blend them. See, back when Pluto and Uranus were together in Virgo, there was a hell of a revolution. But they had a common purpose. Now, it's like everything that one party says, the other party says no. That party says, the other one says no. There's so much conflict in the air. And that is symbolic, in my opinion, of the conflict inside us. I have learned recently for myself, there's no such thing as outside you. Everything that's outside of us is a mirror copy of what's going on inside of us. And how many of us, I can't see your little hands waving, as above, so below, that's right. How many of us have these fights between the part of us that wants to be purposeful, and we want to go save the world, and we want to go to the UN and march up and down, and the other part that wants to go to Sedona and just go in your bare feet and be free? I mean, we got these conflicts between the two, and we have to start to see where the zodiac is exquisite. Here on the exquisite zodiac, 3rd birthday today. We are very proud. I told Liza I would ask for her to pop her face in here. I hope she will, because I've been telling you about Liza J. Brown for a long time, and I think a lot of you don't think she really exists, and I hope she'll come poke her head in front of the camera, because I want you to see. Liza? Yeah. I'm calling you. The people don't know you really exist. Are you just a name? Yeah, she doesn't exist until you see her. She's quantum. She's a quantum reality. She does not exist until you see. And Lisa says she loves her, and she's going to show you her face. This is my girl and my partner. Get in here, picture. There she is.
Right.
There you go. Yay! There's Eliza Jane Brown.
Hello, everybody.
The co-author of our wonderful book, which is 3 years old today. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm so glad everybody's sending you such nice, warm soulmates we are. Well, thank you very much. Now, I really have, I have never taught anything so slowly in my life. And I really concentrate tonight on doing that. I want to wrap it up and leave plenty of time for your questions. These guys from the calling. Do you understand? Let me know by typing. Do you understand by what I mean about the Uranus-Pluto that were together when these things were born, and they got to the right angle? Now, in about 40 years from now, you will have the opposition, because Uranus is going to continue around. And the stages of a cycle, something is born, when it gets to the right angle, is the first test. When it gets to the opposition or the full moon stage, is, boy, I can see the problems with this, the good and the bad. Am I going to continue this or drop it? Then the final square, which is 3/4 the way around, is where you can really see how you're doing, and it looks like things are going to stay that way. And that's why you have your last-ditch effort to modify it. So we can see now that we can continue Medicare, we can continue black rights, we can continue voting rights, we can continue all these things, but only if we really mean it. Only if it's real. Part of us, not just some law that came from D.C. That's what's going on. And there are a lot of people, and I'm not going to mention which group, but there are a lot of people that don't want to see any of this kind of progress. And I had I want to say one more thing till I open up the question. You'll be 90 years old then, and revolutionary, and I'll be right with you. I had a very telling experience the other day with a friend of mine. We don't have the same political views, but it was very revealing. He said, we've got to stop this political correctness. It's killing us. So I really thought about that, and I thought about soccer games that have to end up in a tie, and, nobody can bruise anybody, and everybody's so sensitive to every little thing you say. And I thought, in a lot of ways you're really right, but I realized what he was really saying was he was anti-evolutionary. Because what a lot of the political correctness is, we're becoming aware of how we treat each other. No, I don't want to drink that stuff. No, I don't want that label I want the label on my food to say what's in it. No, I'm aware of this. We're becoming more and more aware. Look at the phenomenal work that one of your members tonight, Carol Oakley's doing. Every day she's on Facebook fighting for this animal, that animal, this animal. The phenomenal work so many of you are doing. Awareness is not political correctness. That's the problem. There's a whole party now that exists that is resisting growth and evolution and calling it political correctness. That's Pluto. Pluto, evolve or die. And the great thing that's happening, because I don't want to paint a dire picture here, there are marvelous things happening, because remember, where does Pluto go next? Into Aquarius. And when he gets into Aquarius, I want to buy the world a Coke. We're going to work together. Aquarius is about the group mentality. But all this Capricorn, old crap, has to be cleaned up first, and that's what's going on. And people have said to me, when's the recovery? When's the recovery? This cancer country. When's the recovery? When's the recovery? There is no recovery. There may be one, but the reason I say that is when I got the patient open and I'm pulling out disease and I'm pulling out cysts and I'm pulling out illness, I can't sew the patient back up just because you're tired of seeing all the dead cells. You got to leave the patient on the table till we're done and the disease is removed. And that's what's worrisome, is how much more can this body take, the USA. Let alone, remember, this is nation-centric. These planets are universal. They're happening in all countries. So, we're seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly, but now you know why. And I hope that you, soft, wussy, pussy footing. Right, okay. Now, I want to open up for your questions. If somebody would like, we could try putting your camera on, putting your microphone on. Who has a question that's related to the topic? I hope this has made sense to you. We've got about 25 more minutes. You'll notice 19 people are online, 1 is on the phone. So 5 of us didn't show up. I have a question. I know someone whose personal chart is this, is 7 to 29 degrees Pisces. This person be a light worker of the time. No, you cannot You cannot take one position of one planet and determine anything at all. Being a Pisces, that's a critical degree, means they have basic characteristics, but you certainly have to do the whole chart, see all the patterns. Way too much is done in the world in terms of just sun signs. Because the archetypes in your chart are very complex, and you're mixing 10, 11. Well, look at a chart. You can just see how complex a chart can be. So, person, if somebody were born right now in Pittsburgh, this is their chart. There's their Jupiter, there's their moon in Libra, there's the sun in Sagittarius, there's Uranus in Aries, there's the big T-square triangle. So you can see it's very complex. And this is why you don't see many good astrologers, because it's very, very tough to look at that myriad of circles and find meaning in it. Okay, other questions? Come on, don't be shy if you got questions. Who wants to try to be on camera? Who wants to try to... Colleen, why don't you say something? Hello?
I'm sorry, I muted myself, and I don't have it on the computer. I'm on my phone.
Okay, would you like to ask a question?
No.
Okay, I just wanted to test. Did everybody hear Colleen? We're just saying, I want to keep awareness of our emotions. Sandra, okay, very good, Rebecca. Sandra's a wonderful teacher of A Course in Miracles for many years. Is it possible to keep a balance or only keep an awareness of our emotions? I don't know what the second part means, but certainly it's possible to keep balance. Yes, I'll never forget, I was on the radio 82 through 84, my own weekly show, and one morning, a Libra woman called in, and I forget where the planets were in 82, but I took a commercial, and I was talking to my engineer who was my student, and I had to do the whole chart in 1 minute. I get the birthday on pencil and paper, I'd write down where the planets were real quickly on the chart, and 60 seconds later come back and start to read. So if you students think you got it rough, that's how you learn. So I said to my engineer, I said, oh my God, this woman, she's getting hit by Pluto and Saturn and Mars, and boy, she's getting 5, 6 at once. Hold your horses. And I put her on the air. I said, how you doing? And she said, I'm doing fine. And it just blew my mind. And it taught me a lot. You cannot use these planets to blame. This was a woman who had stayed in, yes, she was a Libra. She had stayed in balance all her life. She had stayed integrated. No. She had stayed integrated. Here was a woman that was welcoming these new energies, because these energies are just new passing what got into you, what came over you, and can you integrate them smoothly or not? A lot of us, if we're not too good at sailing our ship and we've knocked our boat over a couple of times, when the next big wave comes, it's more likely that you're going to get knocked over again. You all know that. And the better you sail, so I tell everybody, I'm not here to tell you how things are going to work out. My advice to you is learn to sail better. Because you're going to always have the rough seas and the winds. And it's amazing how many times you can use a boat as a symbol for these kind of teachings. Okay, outside of some deep prayer, how can we prepare for this revolution? Barbara, great question. Well, we need the revolution. We certainly need the prayer. We need the meditation. But we need to speak up. We need to say, stop bullying kids. We need to say, stop raping women. You're seeing it everywhere. We are in the revolution. Revolution is good. But it's not good once we start. I saw a picture and they were all happy today. They were tear gas, pepper spraying a policeman. That's not the answer. The answer is not this. You know that. So we have to get to work. That's the Pluto. We have to get to work. But the Americans, in my opinion, with Uranus and Gemini, we're in playland. We're in playland. Get a new iPod. Get a new app for your iPhone. We'll fix the thing. We'll fix it. That's what's got to change with Pluto. These Europeans look at us and they voted the most dangerous planet on the planet is the United States. We're good people. We're great people. But our big money industry, defense department has just gone crazy. We have to speak out against it. We have to stop the 57 cents of every dollar going to the Defense Department because we're over-defended. Okay, I personally love the up and out energy of Uranus and Pluto. Descendant, square your moon, the lesbian change, your working. Yes, you're exactly right. Pluto, Pluto, Pluto. Yes, the change is coming. So the answer is not. Number one thing that these planets you don't do is hide. Because they will get you anyway. You don't hide from these forces because of this strange thing. We are really one. And the system is going through change. And what do you do? What do you do when your house is sick? What do you do when somebody's sick? You put them on the table, you give them care, you operate if you have to, but you put the light on it. You look at it with open eyes, intelligence, compassion, but you don't get anywhere by fighting that group, fighting this group, fighting that group. Speak out if something is wrong, certainly, but we have to come up with productive stages, productive ideas. And I must tell you, in my last several years, I've done this 37 years, I've never seen people change like they have in the last 3 years. People are now, they used to, I'm not letting go. I'm not letting go of that job. Oh, no, I can't do that. Security. Oh, worry. People are doing it. People don't care anymore. People are throwing caution to the wind. They're going to do their thing. That's the Uranus and Aries. The confidence, the readiness. But people are feeling this tidal wave. I can't be one of you. I can't remember what it's like to be a pre-astrologer. I've had to sweat out so many weeks and nights. Here comes the planet. Oh, there it went. Here comes the planet. That's just part of the package. But you people are feeling it or you wouldn't be here. So this revolution is going to continue. And think of a revolution. The number one thing you do during a revolution is you can forget about comfort for a while. This is not time for comfort. You can go have a nice weekend somewhere. This is a time for the buzzsaws and the saws and the hammers in your restaurant. This is a time of change and upheaval to change the old. Because all these things we keep looking at are so corrupt and they need to be fixed. Okay, I'm looking at more messages. What are the Pluto Scorpio generation bringing to the table to create change? Well, they're just not BSing. You ever look at some Scorpios, many of them, they look right through you? Don't try to hide from the Scorpio. They look right through you. Do you mean something? Are you made of something? Do you have a character? They're pure people like Virgos. Some of them are corrupt. It all depends. One question with the Scorpio generation, with any Scorpio, with any strong Pluto person, do they hate themselves? If they hate themselves, then they're going to have a tough time with you. If they show compassion for themselves, this is all theory from my book. So that's what you're going to see out of these people. They're not going to accept your weaknesses. They're not going to accept lame answers. They want you to mean something, and they want you to walk your walk. That's what they are. And then juxtaposed to the Pluto and Libra generation, which came before them, that generation was much more about appearance. Look like a model, wear some nice jeans, nice lipstick. smart group of people, but they didn't have the depth, passion that the Pluto and Scorpio. My son says they're sick of the unfairness of the system. That's exactly right. The systems are the Capricorn. And unfairness is a really unfortunate part of life that can only be healed by people being active. We can't just trash Congress, and we can't just trash all politicians. We got to try to put people in who are good with good hearts and do what we can to get the lobbyists out. What's killing us? The lobbyists. Special interest. We're sitting still hearing this stuff, and we're putting up with it. But more and more people aren't putting up with it. So that's how you deal with the revolution. You get involved, but you don't let it become a capital R. You know, you don't let it get ugly. You don't no off with somebody's head. We don't need that. This is the first time we've met each other globally because of the internet. Pluto and Sagittarius. 1995, Windows came out. People lined up around the block to buy Windows. We all could start to see each other on the windows, on the computer. Symbolic. We started to live together. So one of the great things that's happening is religions are clashing. Christianity, Muslim, Palestinian, Jewish. We're meeting each other, and there's this natural friction. Well, when it comes down to it and you shake it really hard, my opinion, you got to solve the peace inside of you. There's your number one answer, in my opinion. You've got to find the peace in you, and then the people next to you will find it. Not because you told them or wagged your finger at them, because they will sense it in you, and they will want it also. So that's my opinion, and I'm sure Sandra Esch agrees with that, being a wonderful teacher of Course in Miracles. We have 13 minutes left. We're going to get along remaining one Saturn in your Sag. Oh no, you cannot assume that we're going to get along when Saturn goes into Sag. In 8 days, it's going to go in there and come back into Scorpio and stay basically in Sag for 28 months. What you're going to see some solutions with religious, yes. But one of the things you're going to see in Sagittarius are the laws of the country, the laws of the world. So all this crazy stuff going on with cyberspace and with rights and eavesdropping, all this, you're going to see legislators being forced to make new laws that are going to drive the new structure, because Pluto's ripping the old one apart. And, many people are trying to benefit by the crashing of the system. So we're going to see Saturn going into Sag. You're going to see tremendous revolution and change and affirmation with education. All things Sagittarian. Communications, education, higher ed, publicity, internet control, all that good and bad. But we're going to start to see regulation. That's what Saturn does. What about money? It seems to be at the root of so many problems. I don't believe in money. I don't believe money exists. I believe, in my opinion, I believe it's all spirit. I believe that if you act from lack, then everybody else is going to act from lack. And if you act from abundance, maybe Sandra can say something too. I am abundant. God feeds me abundantly. God takes care of me. This is what all our spiritual books, no matter what religion it is, it keeps telling us. There's more than enough. There's more than enough pouring through you. And if we keep acting from lack and fear, you either act from lack and fear or trust and reliance and faith. So we have to start spreading that message through our actions, in my opinion. Now, it's granted, it's going to be hard to stay mellow while these two planets are rebellious. So remember, they've been going at it for 4 years. They're starting to calm down in one way. In other words, they're becoming more prevalent in our psyche. These planets do what they do because our psyche is ready for it. There was no Pluto before 1930. It was discovered in 1930. You think it's a coincidence that when it was discovered was the rise of Hitler? Pluto was physically there, or was it? Because we didn't see it. Quantum theory was it wasn't there because we couldn't see it. But the point is, all things happen when we're ready. And this revolution is upon us, not because it's mean, because we're ready. And it is shocking, and it is unresting. But it's here, and a lot of us are starting to pick up the wave and ride it, and that's wonderful. God is our provider, Sandra. We only need to accept his gift. Beautifully said. And see, if we all believe that, you think they'd be fighting every day in Israel and Palestine? The very place that's supposed to be the holy place? To work the law of attraction correctly, we must know our abundance before we can come to have the experience of it. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So if we go out and we got 10 loaves of bread and we shoot people at the door so the family can enjoy all 10, like some of these people in Montana are doing, building their shelters, putting TV programs, hiding in the hole, telling your children, teaching your children how to kill the neighbors, that ain't the answer. We take the 10 loaves and we share it with 9 other families. And everybody's taking care of each other. That's what Pluto in Aquarius is going to bring. But in the meantime, what's so tough now is the people who are the have don't want to give up the old system, even though it's dying. And I think they've made it pretty clear across the board, we don't care if you die. We don't care if you don't have enough insurance. We don't care if you can make your medical bill. We don't care. Go fix it. I put a statement on Facebook the other day that I thought one of our biggest problems was the haves versus the have-nots. And somebody wrote to me and said, well, just go tell them to become a have. And I just thought, well, we could put a little token in a machine and they're going to get a nice job and a nice house and become a have. Well, it's not that simple. So we're at that crisis point now. We're at that point. Are we going to start acting en masse as one unit, caring for each other, or are we going to just keep up this, fear of lack? It helps that they get the most press. Well, of course, but look who controls the press. You got to use big boxes of salt in your mouth when you chew on that one. Many world major countries are being strongly affected by your. Well, of course, every single entity on the earth, every bug, everything's being affected by the Uranus-Pluto. Now, some of the physical manifestations are fracking is the number one thing I'm thinking of, where you're going down in the earth with secret chemicals underneath Pluto down in Hades, stirring things up. If you lived in Southwest PA, you wouldn't believe how the trucks are everywhere. I was riding down the road about 6 years ago, and I saw these big helicopters above, and they were dropping on these long ropes. They were dropping these yellow packages in the middle of the woods, and I kept wondering, what are they dropping on these long tethered lines? Then I realized they probably couldn't take dynamite across the road. They had to drop it in. And then the next thing, they're chopping the trees down. And the next thing, they're just scurrying and they're pouring out the gas wells and the natural gas. I mean, you can't even drive in Southwest PA on the back roads now because there's so much progress taking place with natural gas. So the Uranus-Pluto, what we need to do with it is you see, here's what's interesting. Every degree of the zodiac has a meaning. This is a very famous book by Dane Rudyard, one of the great minds ever. He's deceased. And this book is about what's called the Sabian symbols. You can look it up. In 1927, one of the world's greatest astrologers, Mark Edmund Jones, sat in a park in San Francisco with a blind psychic who was marvelous. Her name was Elsie Wheeler. And he took 360 3x5 cards and he wrote in pencil randomly 1 degree Taurus, 2 degrees Taurus, 3 degrees Taurus. He shuffled them up. And they sat down and he got visions from the first 180 from her. She held a card. She didn't know what was written on it. She got a vision. She wrote it down. They did 180. You can read about it in Wikipedia. Then after lunch, they did the next 180. And she came up with 360 meanings of the degrees. They're called the Sabian symbols. And when you look back at Uranus and Pluto, which were conjunct at 18 degrees of Virgo in October of 65, the meaning of that degree, the vision she saw, was a Ouija board. And Rudyard, extremely talented, intuitive astrologer, probably the greatest astrologer to date, interpreted the Ouija board to mean that we need to start drawing from our intuition. Now, I don't have to speak to people like Carol Mobley and a lot of you, Victoria, who work with this every day. But what that really means when you dive into it, and what this crisis is really about, is are we getting our direction from a real source inside, the God source inside, or is that closed? And one of the things that's kept it closed for so long, in my opinion, has been traditional religion, who the hero was up at the altar. Only the preacher or the minister could talk with God. We sat here, we stood up, and we kneeled down, and we said the right murmurings, and we read the Psalms, and we did the song. But we didn't have the direct experience, and that's part of the revolution. That's why churches are going through such hardship beside their perversions or whatever their the difficulties they have. They have wonderful church's main thing is its ability to provide brotherhood, being together. But people don't want to talk about God out there anymore. They want to experience the God inside. And therefore you see the real seed that was planted in 1965 on October 9th was that Ouija board, was that ability to say we're going to start taking instruction from inner spirit, from Holy Spirit, from inner guide, and all the things that had to take place. I can't tell you what it was like in '69 to be in college and to go to little bookstores. They'd have a little Philosopher's Stone, a little book by Gurdjieff, a little book by Uspensky, a little book by Alan Watts, and the New Age movement was just starting, and a couple of little people read about it here and there. Everybody said you're all quacks and you're all on marijuana. Look what's happened now. Yoga's everywhere. And there are so many thousands of sites and so many people hanging out shingles, good, bad, and ugly, but we're getting it. That's the real revolution, and all these other things that have become acculturated have to move out of the way. That's not political correctness. That's evolution of the species. We're just about out of time. I want to thank you all very much. I've enjoyed it. I will research this and send you your email the link of this recording. Anybody that missed it, I don't know if I can get it to them or not. I think it only goes to people who are registered. I will present this again soon. There will be a $19.99 fee for the ensuing courses. I hope you enjoyed it. I would like to hear from you. any kind of email. I'm rick@starself.com, rick@starself.com. I would love to have your feedback, what you picked up, what you didn't pick up, because this is all new territory. I'm very thrilled to share this space with like minds. I think you all get it in many different ways. We all have different words. But one of the nice things about this is I'm very glad to confirm to you that this is what's going on. It's very real. It's not bad. It is revolutionary. But I think that when you understand it, it really helps more than just throwing rocks at each other. So God bless to you all. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. And I'll be closing. Thank you, Sandra. I'll be closing. Good night.